Welcome back. I'm Valda Ford. It is my pleasure to have with me today Reverend Nancy McLean, and she is the president and CEO of Joseph's House. Welcome. So good to have you here.
Thank you.
So tell me a bit about Joseph's House. I know that the organization is one that started as a personal mission for you in your home, but tell the viewers about Joseph's House.
Well, we started Joseph's House. We actually incorporated in 2004. At the time that we incorporated, I became aware of the fact that if a young man was between the ages of 18 and 20 and lived in this community, if they were homeless, there was no place they could go. They were too old for the youth shelters and too young for the adult shelters. And I had an issue with that.
Yes. It's amazing how we have these gaps where you're too young over here, too old over here, but
Yeah.
you recognize that this group probably a very vulnerable age where you're supposed to be an adult,
Yeah.
but being homeless would be particularly hard.
Yes, it would. You know, I have a personal experience. I have 4 children, and one of my children, I'll call him the prodigal in the house. And because of some of the challenges that we faced with him, I had an up-close experience with what it's like to love a prodigal son. And I realized that my son was not the only prodigal in the community. And I began to realize that this was a population that was really falling through the cracks. Nobody was really reaching out to help this population. And I realized that if somebody didn't do something, we were going to have a serious problem in our community with so many of the young people lost out in the street without direction.
So when they come to Joseph's House, what kind of impact do you have on them? And in turn, how does that affect the community?
Well, first of all, when a young person comes to Joseph's House, they have to be displaced, is a nicer way to say it. But they're really without a place to stay. They're homeless. And so that's the common bond that each of the young men share when they come to Joseph's House. We do an intake interview and kind of find out why they're homeless and to see if they're willing to come into a program such as Joseph's House, because we've got some guidelines. You're looking at 18 to 23-year-olds who have to live by curfew. We shut the house down at 11:30 during the week, and so if you're not in by 10:30, you lose your bed. And so these young men have to make some decisions that, yeah, I'm willing to take the help, even if it means giving up some of my freedom. And when they come into Joseph's House, we encourage them to get back in school if they dropped out of school. We actually have about 4 high schoolers living at Joseph's House right now. We really reach out to the homeless high school population, and we help them set some goals. They can live at Joseph's House up to 2 years, and in that time, we're hoping that they're going to be a lot better off by the time they exit than they were when they first entered the doors.
Well, let's talk about how people become homeless. I know when I was a young girl growing up, the idea of a homeless person was a bum, someone who didn't care, maybe someone who was an alcoholic or just lost their way. But how do young people become homeless?
Well, you know, the picture or the face of homelessness has changed a lot in recent years. With the young adult population, we have many of them who spend most of their life in foster care. At 18, they have a choice. Do I come out of foster care or do I stay? Some of them have an option to stay until they're 21. And many of them is like, I am sick of people telling me what to do. I'm grown and I'm going to live on my own. They get out in the community and they realize, uh-oh, I really wasn't ready to be on my own. But they're already in the community, so where do they go? Many of them become homeless because they aged out of foster care. We have some who become homeless because disarray in the home. We have a lot of young men who come, they don't have a relationship with their father, and mom gets a new boyfriend.
Wow.
And the house is crowded now, and somebody's got to go. And it's usually that young man that has to leave. And so, and then we have some young men who are just rebelling, and mom or daddy say, that's it, you got to go. But where do these kids go? They're still not ready to be independent and on their own. They still there's a lot in life they need to learn before they're really ready. And Joseph's House kind of fills in that gap and teaches the basic life skills. We heap a lot of love on these young people, but a lot of times it's tough love.
Well, that is something that unfortunately our society has lost sight of, the importance of tough love, how we have to tell people that in order for them to be successful, they have to have some guidelines, some boundaries. And if you don't understand how to work in your own house, how can you know how to work out in the community?
That's exactly right. You know, you said something key. Many of the young people who come to Joseph's House have not learned to live within boundaries. So they are rebelling against authority. And when they come into Joseph's House, that's one of the first things we focus on. If you're going to be successful in this lifetime, you're going to have to learn to submit to somebody in authority, whether it's on your job, whether it's in your church. You know, you're not always going to be the boss. You have to learn to live within the boundaries that have been set for you. And we teach that in how we conduct our program. And many of them who can't live within boundaries, they don't stay at Joseph's House too long.
Right, because they can't handle yours either.
That's exactly right.
So how many, tell me the scope and the breadth of the problem. How many young people are homeless?
Well, Gilbert County just released a number a month or so ago of the homeless students that they had in this community. And that number was just a little over 2,600. Now that's homeless students in our community. My experience has been for every student that shares with the school officials that they're homeless, there are at least 2 in that school system that hadn't told anybody.
Right.
And so the problem is a lot worse than what we think. The young adult population, those who are 18 to 23 that we serve, is really hard to get a fix on what that number is. Because, you know, they're everywhere.
Yes.
We can count the ones that come through the doors of Joseph's House. We can house 8 at once. We stay at capacity 95% of the time. We're constantly turning young people away because we don't have beds available.
But that's 8 more lives that have the opportunity to get on the right path and become productive members of society, understanding that just yielding a little bit is sometimes all you have to do.
That's exactly right. And you know, I believe that our community wants to help people in this community who need help. Part of our challenge with Joseph's House is the majority of the community, first of all, don't realize that the homeless young adult population is at the magnitude that it really is. Then they don't know about Joseph's House and the work that we are doing in this community. You know, our vision is to eradicate homelessness among this young adult population, 1 young adult person at a time. But I tell you what, it's a monumental task when you think about what all it takes to really change somebody's life.
So I know that over the past few years with unemployment and a number of other things that have been going on, there might be even more strain on families. Have you seen an increase in the need for such services?
We are seeing more, we're getting more referrals from family members. It's nothing for a mother to bring her son to Joseph's House because the family is displaced. And so, you know, mom has a place to stay, but they can't find a place for the son to live. And so we are really seeing more of this. I think if you just assess the local shelters in this community, you'll see the same thing, that more families are being displaced. And as the families become displaced, you know, the mother's priority is taking care of the little ones. That 18, 19-year-old son, I'm sorry, but you're on your own. And that puts more of them in the community at the mercy of the community.
Well, this is such a major problem, and I see that you've developed a partnership with Sheets.
Yes.
How did that come to happen?
Well, it came about through a partnership with the Rotary Club. One of the local Rotary Clubs has a member on our board of directors, and they decided that they wanted to help Joseph's House. So they began a partnership with Sheetz to bring food into Joseph's House. So food that's just about close to the expiration date, the Sheetz store out on Guilford College Road donates that to Joseph's House. And just having those sandwiches coming in and fruit really makes a difference in our grocery bill. Through that partnership, the board chair and I, we met with Chris, the manager of the Sheetz store, and even though they're giving food, they want to do so much more to help us. So we decided to do a community awareness event where that particular store, they're going to donate some hot dogs, and some of the employees are going to come out and prepare the food, and we're going to give away free hot dogs in the community so that we have an avenue that we can share with the community who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do.
Now, how can other people help you? What other support can you use from the community?
Well, I would be amiss if I didn't say the first way people could help is to give us financial donations. We keep our doors open because people give to Joseph's House. But other than through financial support, we have volunteer opportunities. We had a group from a local accounting firm last Friday. About 10 of them came, and they helped us clean out a building that had donated items, and my staff, we hadn't had a chance to get out there and sort, and so they spent the whole day doing that, and so it's activities like that groups of volunteers can come in and do. Yeah. We have seats on the board that are vacant for people who want to kind of get in the leadership aspect of helping us operate Joseph's House, volunteer opportunities in the office, and there always need for men who want to mentor up with our young men, yes, and help them.
How can we contact you?
I can be contacted through Joseph's House. On the website, it's www.josephshouse.net. My telephone number at Joseph's House is 336-389-9880.
Well, I tell you, there's never a shortage of things that we can learn on this program, and finding out that you are there helping those people at that most vulnerable age is so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's really been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I hope you've enjoyed this segment. And if you know young people who are at that vulnerable stage, that 18 to 23 years of age, who need help, contact Joseph's House. Make sure that you do what you can to make sure that you're giving too of your time and your talents. And please, come back here with us the next time when we have the opportunity to learn more about things that are going on in our community, about ways we can make our community better, about all of the important things that are our community. See you next time.
This has been Public Report. Public Report discusses the issues of interest and importance to our viewing area. Please remember that the views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of TCT or the station.